If we take a step back, we see that much of the early part of the takeover actually began with the Official Languages Act. The premise for the Official Languages Act was sold to the Canadians by Pierre Trudeau as a way to unify the country and bring us all closer together, a way to allow the French, or we, as he often put it, to get services in French from our own federal government. He made it clear that the French people needed to feel at home in Canada, and therefore, if only they could just be able to communicate with their own federal government in their own language, then they would be happy and all of Canada would be more unified. It all sounded so wonderfully simple at the time. Such a wonderful idea. The English would simply accommodate and the French would be happy. All would be well. As if that was going to be enough. With the wisdom of hindsight, we now know that this was only the beginning of the eventual necessity of French in all aspects of Canadian life. Terms like "where numbers warrant" and "in certain circumstances" were code for, even if just one of us makes enough of a stink about it, you'll have to provide the service in French in all areas, no matter what.
A man from Orleans has filed a complaint with OC Transpo over language. Michel Thibodeau says he wants drivers to call out stops in English and in French.
At the start, it was only supposed to be to provide service in French to the French by the federal government.
The statute will provide equality of the two languages in all areas where the citizens of Canada have to communicate with the government.
And that was that. That was all that was proposed. A few warned at the time that we must be careful not to allow this to create a situation whereby the English-only speaking Canadians would eventually be discriminated against, but that was quickly labelled whining and was replaced with the vision of a unified bilingual Canada. All possible negatives were cast aside.
House have indicated that our party will support the resolution, but we've asked that the problems of the unilingual Canadians in the government service be kept in mind, and we also cautioned the government against creating a new injustice. We also cautioned the government against creating a new injustice.
The English went along believing that this wasn't such a bad idea after all. What's the big deal? Offering services by the federal government to the French in their own French language? That should be fine, right? It sounds like a good idea. A gesture of kindness as far as most Canadians were concerned, especially since they felt badly about the early years where their predecessors had passed those anti-French style discriminatory laws and so on. This was a way to make amends.
Quebec will take over more and more. What does Quebec want? More, you know.
And then came the FLSA, the French Language Services Act, which broadens the scope and introduces a trickle-down effect which goes beyond federal government responsibility to provide services in French into now forcing private companies to provide services in French also. And from there we ended up with the completely false and over-frequently heard claim that Canada is a bilingual country, a completely bilingual country, which of course it is not. It was labeled by someone at some point as a country with two official languages, but Canada is by no stretch of the imagination an officially bilingual country. After all, how could it be? How could Canada be an officially bilingual country if one of its parts, or provinces, the province of Quebec, incidentally the very province that is bullying everyone else into being bilingual, has declared itself to be a unilingual French-only province? That sheer fact alone means that it's impossible for the country, the whole country of Canada, to be an officially bilingual country if one of its parts is not, or is French only.
Okay, but how does that explain the French first phone messages people hear when they call in from other countries around the world? And also, what about those federal websites? Why do they show the minority French language in the dominant position?
Hang on, we're working our way towards those answers. You see, Pierre Trudeau is a great thinker and strategist, and thus, As I said before, he conjured up a plan based on some very coy assertions, assumptions, predictions, and a few simple facts. The assertions were that Canada must stay together at all cost and must be accommodating to the French minority. The assumptions were that the French were more bold and in-your-face type of clan, while the English were more placid, accepting, and easygoing lot. The predictions were that these traits would play out with the French taking on a dominant position, while the English would be more accepting and accommodating. And the simple facts, well, those were in essence the true brilliance of Trudeau's plan. Trudeau even told us about and boasted about some of these things in his own way.
C'est vraiment, moi je suis entré en politique pour précisément que le Canada soit fort et en particulier pour que les francophones québécois puissent avoir leur place dans ce Canada.
He told us all, including the French, what he was going to do and how he was going to do it. He championed the idea of bilingualism. He made it sound like the French still use this ploy to this day. It will be a great thing for all Canadians to be bilingual. The push for a fully bilingual Canada then became the method by which he could ultimately hand this country over to his French clan. You see, he reasoned that as a result of pure and simple fact that most French-speaking people just simply also knew English, while at the same time most English-speaking people had no reason or no need to know French. Thus, if he declared that Canada should be bilingual, the French, already knowing English, would have a distinct advantage. Of course, he added the patriotic concept of nationalism, saying that this quest would make all Canadians feel warm and fuzzy and filled with pride for having accomplished such a unifying goal. The problem was, only one of the groups who were supposed to be involved in the unifying goal had any interest in being bilingual at all.
A plan to transform traditionally bilingual Quebec into an essentially French state.
What becomes clear at this point is that Trudeau was right about the assumptions that the English are more placid and easygoing. Even though the French were clearly not at all interested in bilingualism, the English went along anyways, lock, stock, and barrel. They bought into the idea that all English children must be sent to French immersion schooling so that they could compete in this newly Frenchified Canada. Behind the scenes, of course, Trudeau realized that making all jobs and all positions bilingual essential would give the French a huge distinct advantage from the get-go. He was even quoted as saying things like, "Unilingual Anglophones will be sentenced to a lifetime of job immobility." In the early years, they tried to make it seem fair by using government to help pay for and subsidize French courses and training. It was initially provided and paid for by the government. Government employees could even take time off in order to attend French classes with nice French bilingual bonuses waiting for them once they graduated.